Governor, we thank you very much for sharing your views on the state with us, and here's just a small token of our appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. I get to open it?
Sure, you're actually the first person who's actually wanted to open it on stage, but we'll go with that.
I did learn, you learn all these lessons. There is one country that if the ambassador comes to you and gives you a present, you're not supposed to open it. So now I always ask, because I started to open it and he let me know that I wasn't supposed to. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. We'll start with our questions with our first student from Palm Beach Central High School.
Good afternoon, Governor. I'm Jamal Fetto from the Palm Beach Central High School debate team. The Everglades is the lifeblood of South Florida. We all applaud the bipartisan efforts in the U.S. Congress in December that approved $142 million towards restoration. We also applaud your recent proposed state budget of $40 million toward the Everglades. But the most recent National Academy of Sciences report recommends that the state continue its active land acquisition efforts, particularly the 187,000 acres belonging to the U.S. Sugar. Currently, there is zero money budgeted for any land acquisition to the Florida Forever program. Do you support purchasing the U.S. sugar land once the economy improves, or is the Everglades doomed to more decades of planning and peril?
Okay. I don't know. Melissa, you want to answer? Yeah. Here. Okay, so here's where we are. The goal is step one. Look, I don't think anybody in this room thinks that we shouldn't do what we can to improve the Everglades. And the two big things are, one, we've got to improve water quality, and we've got to improve the flow. All right. So what we did is we put a proposal out there, and if you in politics, if you put something out there, it makes it easy to get attacked. But what we did was, my belief in business has been, and all I've ever done is do business, is that you can't get anybody to agree with you unless you put a proposal on the table and see if they have a better idea. So that's what we did. With the support of the South Florida Water Management District and Melissa Herschel Vineyard at the Department of Environmental Protection, we put a proposal out on the table, and we started sitting down with all the federal stakeholders, EPA, Interior, Justice, and the Corps of Engineers. And we did that in, I guess, our first meeting with them where we laid out was in October. And so we've been having meetings since. I'm optimistic that we're going to get a resolution with regard to that. And it'll be if you've seen the plan, it's a 10-year plan. I think the cost for the state is around to less than $400 million, right, Melissa? A little bit more, okay. It's about $400 million, but it's a 10-year plan. And what it does, it's our belief. There's no perfect science. It's our belief of how you can make it happen, and then we'll continue to try to improve. So that's our plan. We're working. I hope we'll get that done. With regard to purchasing more land, my budget did include money to purchase more land, but my goal is not. I don't believe it's our goal that the state ought to own all the land. Our goal is to say, what land do we need to make sure that we restore the Everglades, but we continue to allow business to happen in the state? We have if you look at our state economy, our #1 economy is tourism. Our #2 economy is the agriculture. We're growing in all areas, including manufacturing. Matter of fact, if you look at manufacturing, in the 4 years before I came to office, I think we lost over 20,000 manufacturing jobs, and I think just in the month of December, we added 5,000 manufacturing jobs. So we've started the process. Manufacturing is coming back. If you look at our opportunity as a state, it's tourism, it's agriculture. You look at the expansion of the Panama Canal. You look at the expansion of the economies of Central and South America. You look at our 14 seaports. We should be very successful in shipping. If we're successful in shipping, there will be a lot of manufacturing around our ports as long as we put the money in there. So part of what I've tried to do with our Department of Transportation expenditures is make sure our ports are ready. So I think it was last February, a year ago, I committed $78 million to the Port of Miami to finish the dredge project. When that's finished, it'll be one of the few ports in the country that are ready for the post-Panamax ships, and it'll be 33,000 permanent long-term jobs. But I think everybody I deal with in Tallahassee, we're all focused on the Everglades. We're all focused on the environment. We clearly want to do the right things. It's always a trade-off between how much money we have and the science and making sure we continue to have jobs.
Second student question.
Good afternoon, Governor. I'm Stephanie Barra from the Palm Beach Central High School debate team. Your Facebook page recently congratulated Governor Mitt Romney's primary victory here in Florida. You cited his message of restoring economic prosperity by lowering taxes, cutting regulations, and allowing companies to outcompete their global competitors. Your own efforts along these lines of shrinking government have included privatizing prisons, switching Medicaid recipients to HMOs, and encouraging charter schools. What advice would you give the potential next president as how to go about making this shared vision happen?
Okay. Thank you. I think the next president ought to do the same thing that we're doing in Florida. The way I think about it is America's got to be, look, we were built based on private enterprise. This country, that's how this country was built. And so if we put ourselves at an economic disadvantage to job creation, which is going to be done through businesses, then we're not going to continue to grow. So it's no different what we're doing here. We've got to, step one, say to ourselves, we cannot have the second highest corporate tax rates in the world, federal corporate tax rates. You just can't do it. I mean, I call on businesses pretty much every day, and I talk, and they ask me basically three things: what's your tax structure, what's your regulatory environment, and what's your litigation environment? That's what they ask. We are all competing. We're competing with Vietnam, India, China. We are competing, whether we want to compete or not. If you look around the people in this room, think of how many products you're buying from overseas, and you're buying them from overseas because they can provide the product or service less expensively than we can in America. So the next president needs to focus on reducing the cost of government, which will allow us to reduce taxes. They need to look at all of our regulation and say, do we need this? Maybe it made sense 20 years ago. Maybe it's a nice to have, but we cannot compete. And we also need to look at our regulatory environment, our litigation environment. And then we've got to make sure that we do no different than what you do in business. You go build relationships around the world. These trade missions that we've done, these 4 trade missions, I think it'll have a dramatic impact if we just continue to do it and build relationships all across the world. And that's one thing a governor has the opportunity to do, and that's something the president has the opportunity to do. And then the last thing is I would rely on the states to make a lot of decisions. I would use them as laboratories. For example, we had a dramatic improvement in welfare reform in the 1990s because we gave block grants to the states. The biggest problem in our budget, if you think about the state budget, there's only really 3 big items in the budget. It's education, it's prisons, and it's health care. So the health care that the states are responsible for is primarily driven by Medicaid. So Medicaid is a program for those that can't afford health care. So what happens is the federal government takes your tax dollars, they give us a portion of that back and tell us how to run the program. A better approach would be to say, here's a certain amount of dollars back, you run the program, because we know if you don't run the program well, you won't get reelected. Because all of us want to have the right safety net for those that can't afford it. Thank you for the question.
Now we'll go to some audience questions. We have quite a number on a variety of topics. And Governor, this is something you and I spoke about briefly before the start of the program. A total of 11 applicants have applied to fill the remainder of Palm Beach County State Attorney Michael McAuliffe's term. What considerations are you weighing in your selection? Will party affiliation and intent to run or not run play a role? And are you ready today to name his successor? And if not, when, since he is leaving office on March 16th?
Yes, yes, no, in the next 3 weeks.
Now skipping on to education. State universities took a big funding hit yesterday under the $70.7 billion budget approved by the Florida Senate. Funding hit, a funding hit, yes. Approved by the Florida Senate. Florida Atlantic University here in Palm Beach County, and we do have some FAU representatives here. FAU stands to lose $47 million of its state operating dollars. What is your reaction to the Senate proposal, and how is the state going to build a better university system?
Right. Okay. First off, here's how I think you build a better university system. First off, you operate as a system. You don't have the universities competing against each other and spreading their wings all across the state. So that's the first thing. You say, bless you. You say we're going to, and we should be excellent in certain things. Like if you, in your business to be successful, you've had to be good at something. If you were melba-toast, if you were mediocre, if you were just okay, you were out of business probably, especially in tough times, okay? We should have the same expectations. If we're going to take your tax dollars and give it to any area, but take universities. If we give it to them, they ought to be the best. They have the same attitude GE had. We'll be the top couple or we won't be in the business. We don't need to have 11 different places where you can get the exact same degree. We don't need to do that. It's not efficient. You wouldn't do it with your business dollars. You shouldn't do it with your tax dollars. So we're starting the process of thinking through how do we operate as a system. So in October, I sent a letter to all the university presidents, and it went simple. It went basically like this. I think of the job of the university is to create an environment where people can get a job. So what are we doing to measure your success? Okay, per degree. Are people getting jobs? Are they, what are you excellent at? What sort of surveys are you doing with employers? Are you asking employers what sort of training they need to make sure they hire your students? We ought to be thinking like that in our universities. So I think we have a great start on that discussion. I think that one mistake I made, depending on how you look at it. I was giving a talk in Fort Myers back in October on education, and I was talking about science, technology, engineering, and math degrees, and how that's where the jobs are right now. And out of the blue, I said, I don't know if there's any job. I think I said, I don't know if there's any jobs in anthropology. Well, that made the national news. But the best was my daughter called me the next day, and she said, "Hey, Dad," and she said, "You might pull up Yahoo. I'm the #1 story in the country right now." She said, "You might remember I got a degree in anthropology." I said, "How did that work out for you?" She said, "Well, I haven't found any jobs in anthropology." But I think we're starting the conversation to what's the purpose of our universities and our state colleges? Are they making sure individuals get the education, they can get jobs because it's your money? And then the final issue that we're dealing with now is a budget that we're walking into this year. For the fiscal year starting July 1st, we'll have, last year it was about almost a $4 billion budget deficit. This year it's about a $1.7 billion budget deficit. And just to put that in perspective, that doesn't mean our economy is not getting better. Revenues in the state are growing. I think the general revenue in the state was up $1.4 billion this year. So it's not that our economy is not growing, it's the fact that our Medicaid cost is growing faster than our general revenue. So if you go back and say, if you're going to do the budget, you've got education, you've got prisons, and you've got health care. So you've got three things. Anytime I talk about three things now, I always think about Rick Perry when he couldn't come up with a third one. But I really do now. So in our universities, what we're doing now is what the House and Senate have done is or the Senate in particular said is, look, they have dollar numbers significantly in excess of their statutory minimum, which is 5% of their budget. So at a time where we have a big budget deficit, should we use up some of that surplus? And I think that's the approach they're taking right now. So it'll go through conference in the House and the Senate. We'll see where they come out. But there has to be some savings somewhere. One of the things that didn't pass this session, which was prison privatization, which is a way to save some money. But right now, I'll be surprised if it's as big as the Senate's, but we'll see.
Moving on